I think for anybody that wasn't able to attend our meeting on August 17 with the Corps of Engineers and South Florida Water Management District and the Department of Interior, what they need to take away is this. The Corps of Engineers says that they're managing Lake Okeechobee to ensure the Herbert Hoover Dike doesn't fail. That is not the case. They're managing Lake Okeechobee to make sure that they keep water on Lake Okeechobee for everybody that wants to use that water, never worrying about the health and human safety impacts of the toxic algae that they're sending into the Treasure Coast. They're lying to us, and we're not going to allow these lies any longer.
An algae crisis threatening our Treasure Coast.
A cycle of despair and disgust amidst promises made and broken.
Billions of gallons of water are rushing from Lake Okeechobee to our coastline.
How much pollution is too much? How much danger is too much? How much before this will stop?
So on August 17th, I think we probably had one of the most important meetings that we could have for the Treasure Coast, and that was when we brought together the Department of Interior, the South Florida Water Management District, Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and a number of other stakeholders when it pertains to our waterways. And the goal of that meeting was one single issue, and that was to talk about, can we lower the levels of Lake Okeechobee during the dry season being December, January, February, March, April, so that everybody is ahead of schedule when we move into that hurricane season, that wet season. And I think some of the most important things that were discussed were, number one, the Corps of Engineers very pointedly saying that their number one goal, their number one mission, the reason they have a 3-inch binder with 3 rings in it is to talk about all the ways that they have to maintain the integrity of the Herbert Hoover Dike.
2008 Lake Okeechobee Regulation Schedule, which is the op order or the battle book that I use to execute the mission here. And so what that says, what this book says, and many of you were in the rooms in 05, 06, 07 when we pulled this thing together, is it says, and this is a quote, that integrity of the Herbert Hoover Dike is the dominant factor in the decision-making process.
And to me, I think there's a level of dishonesty that's going on when the Corps of Engineers says that, because the truth of the situation is that the Corps of Engineers has ample opportunity to discharge water during those dry months to areas other than the east or west coast, but sometimes it is the coasts that actually want water. The west coast was in fact requesting water during those dry months. They were requesting about 1,000 CFS of water, and Mayor Kevin Ruane from Sanibel Island came over and talked about that they wanted water during January and February, March. They could have lowered Lake Okeechobee, and they were denied that water.
I've asked on the record 14, 13, 16, 17. I've asked to lower the lake. And would that have solved this situation? No. Would it have helped? Absolutely. I get an email that we sent 300 CFS. Well, I appreciate the fact that we've moved water south. We certainly know that a couple inches off the lake was more than that. So I look at this situation and I applaud what you've done, Congressman. I've been asking for this. We're working together as East and West Coast people. That's what we are. Our job is now we truly do. And honestly, my concern is I'm not going to have an economy to live with. Thank you.
Solidarity, y'all.
And that is a level of dishonesty when the Corps of Engineers is telling us we're doing everything that we can do to make sure that we ensure the integrity of the dike, but it's very simple math. Dike integrity equals lower levels of water on Lake Okeechobee. That's the simple math. Less water equals less risk to the Herbert Hoover Dike.
Colonel, you held up this book about the hurricane. You held it up on the West Coast, I believe on Wednesday or Tuesday earlier this week, and you just said, you pounded on your Lores book. You said, your number one mission is integrity of the Herbert Hoover Dike. That is your number one mission. Every one of us in here, I'm assuming, has done first grade math. And the first grade math is that every inch of water off Lake Okeechobee means less risk to that integrity of the dike around Lake Okeechobee. We are asking that you fulfill your mission of putting less risk to that dike.
But the Corps of Engineers isn't doing everything they can do to create less risk to that dike. They're trying to keep water on Lake Okeechobee, and this is the crux of that issue. The Corps of Engineers can't continue to tell our community that their number one priority is maintaining the integrity of the Herbert Hoover Dike if they're not going to do everything that they can do to lower the levels of Lake Okeechobee in the drier months before it comes an emergency situation. And our community shouldn't have to tolerate this kind of dishonesty. At one point, I almost gasped when the South Florida Water Management District put up a slide that said if they released water during the dry season, then one of the potential hazards could be that areas might have to go to 3 days a week of watering their lawn.
And I don't like to try to make this a combative situation, but Mr. Marks, when you put up a board on a slide on the screen that says people have to go to 3 days a week of watering their lawn, that's something that falls on deaf ears here when you're talking about our entire waterway being destroyed. That's not an apples to apples comparison of people having to make sacrifices.
I think that really put into perspective the kind of priorities that the South Florida Water Management District has. You can see the algae behind me here. This is a risk to human health and safety. This is affecting every level of our economy, and to have the South Florida Water Management District tell our community that some people might have to go to 3 days a week of watering their lawn if they were to manage Lake Okeechobee in a better way, that's absolutely insulting to our community to say somebody watering their lawn is more important than the health and human safety of all of the men, women, and children on the Treasure Coast who they're releasing this blue-green cyanobacteria microcystin algae into their communities. The health and human safety of the tens of thousands of people on the Treasure Coast has to be taken into consideration. These are real lives, and this can be stopped. And that's why it's so frustrating. This algae coming into our community is entirely preventable. Lowering Lake Okeechobee has to be prioritized for a number of reasons. You know, when we talk about any project that we're doing with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or South Florida Water Management District, whether it's repairing the Herbert Hoover Dike or building a reservoir south of Lake Okeechobee, all of that costs taxpayer dollars, billions of dollars. To manage Lake Okeechobee at a lower level, where during the dry season, water is sent to the south, water is sent to places that are asking for water, instead of destroying the Treasure Coast of Florida or the west coast of Florida. When management is done in that way, it doesn't cost $1. The next steps for our community is this. We need to be pushing everybody. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the South Florida Water Management District, and everybody that uses one drop of water off Lake Okeechobee. We are not going to tolerate your mismanagement of Lake Okeechobee. We are not going to allow you to permit that you keep water on Lake Okeechobee for all of these other uses, for all of these other entities and special interests, if it means destroying our community because you have to discharge water into our community that's poisonous and toxic and hazardous for people to even come in contact with.